Welcome, everybody. I welcome you in the name of the feminist strike collectives from Leipzig and Munich and the MOVE project of investigation. And I'm very happy to welcome all of you here, and especially the panelists from different parts of the world talking today about the Istanbul Convention. First of all, I wanted to tell the participants that just joined that we want to record this event because not everyone that wants to assist is able to assist right now, and so we would like to ask you to turn off your cameras if you're not, if you don't want to be seen on later publication or uploads of this video. And please write us in the chat if you have any questions regarding this record. But the plan is to upload it on a later date in the context of the feminist strike. I'm Leo from the Feminist Strike Collective from Leipzig, and this is our 10th event in our series of events called KnowYourGlocalActivist. We started to organize these digital events of exchange with activists, feminist activists all over the world because of the pandemic situation that forced us all into Zoom and similar stuff. But on the other hand, we are very happy and thankful for all the information and exchange we've got thanks to this series of events. And it's very exciting to have the 10th event tonight. I will give the word now to Gisela.
Yeah, thank you, Leo, for bringing up this idea of cooperation between the different feminist strikes in Germany. And maybe I tell a little bit about how our idea developed to have this discussion this evening. With our panel tonight, we are responding to the events on July 1st, so the day when Turkey's withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention was sadly official, and the day and on this day the withdrawal was answered by a loud wave of protests internationally and also in Turkey. And maybe to outline our idea, or the idea of this edition of Know Your Local Activist, I just give a very brief overview of the events concerning the Turkish withdrawal. And in the last months, because maybe some of you don't have it in mind at the moment. Just to mention it, the Istanbul Convention is an international agreement of members by the Council of Europe to protect women and girls from gender-based violence. That means, first of all, the approval of violence as gender-based violence, and moreover, the convention is an agreement to, and I think this is very important, to develop structures of prevention, protection, and penalty regarding gender-based violence. And the Turkey was one of the first countries signing the Istanbul Convention, and followed with several steps of its ratification. And in spring this year, Erdogan announced the withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention, and it's clear that this will increasingly expose Flinta to gender-based violence. From my point of view, Erdogan's explanatory statement with the withdrawal is remarkable. He declared that LGBTIQA communities had captured the Istanbul Convention, and this statement was followed and consolidated by a narrowed image of women reduced to maternity or motherhood and being subject to a patriarchal family. And from our viewpoint, this is an attack on queer feminist movements, and it's aiming on the division of broad alliances that are fighting for freedom and for social protection. And from our viewpoint, this move from Erdogan is also not alone standing. It's part of a broad nationalist authoritarian right-wing strategy, and it can be observed in different countries all over Europe. Things like attacks on women and Flinter. The struggle for a ratification of the Istanbul Convention, which is going on, which has been going on the last years, is now more than ever from our side depending on a transnational queer feminist solidarity, and this motivated us to join the transnational opposition against the withdrawal by inviting for this discussion. And with this edition of Know Your Local Activist, we want to contribute to the Transnational Day of Queer Feminist Action on 1st of July by some kind of a follow-up. We want to shed today light on different local queer feminist struggles against violence and for freedom. And moreover, we want to look back on this, on the Transnational Day of Struggle. Finally, we would like to discuss common strategies against current right-wing and patriarchal tendencies that can be observed, that are putting pressure on women and LGBTIQ communities. So we invited a transnational panel for our discussion, and we will introduce our 4 participants now. And I'm glad to hand over to Sophia, who will moderate this evening and now introduce our 4 guests.
Thank you very much, Gisela, for the summary of the recent events and the introduction. I'm happy and honored to moderate this event, and I'd say before we start by presenting our panelists, I would like to present the rules of engagement. So if you have comments or questions, please type the asterisk, the star in the questions, the question mark for technical problems or immediate issues, and a plus or 2 pluses for approval. So yeah, these are the rules of engagement, and I'd say now we're ready to dive right into the event. First of all, by presenting our panelists. So we have Natassa Diamanti. She is a feminist activist from Greece who is organized in the 8th of March Assembly in Athens. She's also active in a local environmental collective and is working as a refugee education coordinator. She has spoken before at one of our events during the Strike Alliance's 8th of March Action Week with her comrade Despina. Welcome, Natassa. Then we
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Then we have Özlem Kaya, who is a feminist activist who is currently working in Hafisa Merkezi in Berlin. It's the Berlin office of the Turkish human rights organization Hafisa Merkezi. The organization is a human rights organization founded by human rights defenders, academics and lawyers from Turkey. And based on their experiences in Turkey, Hafisa Merkezi Berlin aims to grapple with the common threats of authoritarianism, right-wing populist movements in different parts of the world, and fight for democratic civic spaces. Özlem is also engaged with the online feminist blog Katlak Zemin, I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced it okay-ish, and is an active member of the UnitedforIstanbulConvention campaign group. The campaign brought the Turkish protests against the withdrawal to an international level by publishing transnational statements, providing social media material, and especially by accompanying the protests on 1st of July by an online protest map. So nice to have you here, Özlem, welcome.
Nice to be here with you today.
Thanks. And then we have Kalina Denska, who is part of the queer feminist initiatives Le Femme and FemBunt. Le Femme is a collective struggling against violence against women, trans and queer people by connecting anti-capitalist, anti-racist and feminist forms of social critique. FemBunt is a collective of Bulgarian migrants in Berlin, which is opposing gender inequality in Bulgaria and in the whole world. Moreover, Kalina is a member of the feminist network E.A.S.T, Essential Autonomous Struggles Transnational, in collaboration with other European activists. The network is connecting different struggles against exploitation, patriarchal violence, and institutional racism regarding social reproduction. So thank you for being here, Kalina.
Thanks for having me.
And then we have Dr. Elif Artan, who is part of the Berlin office of DaMigra. She's involved in the German Bündnis Istanbul Convention, translated it would be Alliance Istanbul Convention. And yeah, the Alliance aims to inform about the ratification process of the IC, for example, by developing alternative reports on sexual violence against Flinter Star. So welcome, Elif.
Thanks for the invitation.
So glad to have you all here, and just a short explanation. In the following, I'm going to speak of Flinter Star persons. Flinter stands for female, lesbian, inter, trans, and agender persons, and we have decided to use the term as it includes more genders than the binary term women. So we are very happy to welcome this transnational panel. And in the next 2 hours, we are going to shed light on different local queer feminist struggles and how to actually bring them together. So in the first part of the event, we are mainly going to discuss questions concerning the IC and the activists' work on the topic. Then we will briefly touch the 8th of March, as well as transnational collaboration possibilities. And of course, there's a second part with an open floor for questions and or a discussion. So thank you all for being here. We are looking forward to hear your perspectives and takes on the recent developments. And I'd say let's dive right into it with the first question on the 1st of July Action Day. Özlem, the first question is directed towards you. How did you spend the 1st of July, and what was going on the 1st of July in Turkey? And how have you and United for Istanbul been involved?
Thank you very much for the invitation again. Yeah, on the 1st of July, as Gisela already mentioned, Turkey became the first country which officially withdrew from the Istanbul Convention, as all we know. So the first signatory became the first country to withdraw. To be honest, it was mainly the period before 1st of July, which was quite intense. It was last summer already, in July 2020, the Istanbul Convention became a topic for the first time in Turkey. The deputy chair of the governing party, AKP, declared it wrong that Turkey to have ratified the convention. So back then, last summer, despite this increasing attacks on the freedom of expression and demonstrations and these restrictions against pandemic being manipulated to suppress social movements, many women, feminist and LGBT organizations got organized immediately in different cities of Turkey and, went on the streets to defend Istanbul Convention. So ordinary citizens of Turkey were defending the articles of an international convention. Then we arrived to March 20th, and with a presidential decree that was published in the middle of the night on an official newspaper, Turkey had withdrawn from the convention. So that very night, one of the biggest social media demonstrations had happened. And in the following days, thousands of women and LGBT went on the streets. So as a response to these protests, actually this Directorate of Communication issued a statement telling that this convention has been manipulated, deviated from its aim. So the manipulation, according to them, was done by LGBTI people, of course. And in that very statement, official statement, they were also giving reference to other countries. It was interesting because they were already saying, like, it is not only being debated in Turkey, it's already, Istanbul Convention has already been debated in many other countries as well. So like after that period, like March, like this COVID restrictions were implemented quite extensively due to the high number of cases in Turkey. So, but still, on social media, online meetings, gatherings everywhere, Istanbul Convention was carried to the topic. Istanbul Convention campaign group was formed to organize the demonstrations. So since this restrictions has been loosened a little bit, like which means since the beginning of June, almost every single day we're on the streets in different parts of Istanbul and other cities. So like on the 1st of July, thousands of women and LGBTI came together in Istanbul at Tünel at the end of Istiklal Street. Maybe for the ones who don't know Istanbul, like it's a very centric, long pedestrian street at the heart of the city, which unfortunately turned into a shopping street for the last many years. But actually, historically, like the street has hosted many protests. But like this, the end of one end of the street is Taksim Square, and the other end is Tünel, and this Istiklal Street and this Taksim Square has historically, as I said, like hosted many protests. But since Gezi uprising, it has gradually closed to all protests and protesters. So all women and LGBT actually gathered on the other end of the street, and they were only allowed to walk like 100 meters or so and then stopped. But I'm always astonished with the capacity of the demonstrators to maneuver, like they walked the other way around, so continued their march towards Galata Tower and Karaköy. So it was not only also in Istanbul, in almost around 15 different cities, public protests were organized, and the message was clear: it hasn't ended for us. So like as United for Istanbul Convention group, it's like we're more of an international group of feminist and LGBT activists from different parts of the world. We also organized an online demonstration. It's actually still open. So you can go to UnitedforIstanbulConvention.com webpage and pin yourself on the webpage. This was actually not solely designed as a solidarity campaign to support the struggle of feminists and LGBT movement in Turkey. We want to mainly draw attention to the global spillover effect of this decision and move can potentially have. So, like, because this withdrawal is the culmination of global attacks against human rights in general, women and LGBTI rights in particular. So we wanted to give the message that we won't back down, and it's also not only about the rights, but it's also about gender equality, human rights, democratic principles that are at stake right now. So we are, we will continue our struggle. So like just one more point I want to raise at this moment. On the very 1st of July, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also unveiled a 4-year action plan for combating violence against women. It was also like insane. On the very same day of the withdrawal, they were announcing an action plan to combat violence against women. While presenting this action plan, Erdogan said some quote unquote, like some circles are trying to portray our withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention as a step back in our battle with violence against women. Our battle did not start with the Istanbul Convention, and it will not end with our withdrawal from the treaty, he said. And actually, we are all telling the same, also as a feminist. You know, our struggle hasn't started with Istanbul Convention, so will not stop with the withdrawal decision.
Okay, thank you very much, Özlem, for telling us about the recent events and also for putting them into context. Elif, maybe you could take up Özlem's report from your perspective. So how have you been observing the 1st of July in Turkey, and what kind of reactions have you been observing in Germany, especially from your standpoint as a representative of the organization DaMigra?
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I should really shortly talk about DaMigra. DaMigra is the umbrella association of migrant women organizations in Germany. So we are representing more than 60 migrant organizations. And of course, the Istanbul Convention is a huge part of our job, lobbying about the implementation of the Istanbul Convention for the full protection of migrant and refugee women. And we are taking the case withdrawal of Turkey from legal perspective. So we are asking, what does it mean to be part of an international convention, international agreement, and then saying, okay, I'm giving up and just taking my everything back and going home. And so this is our question. And we are organizing an event in September with regard of femicides. So what we are going to discuss all this question, and we are our main question is actually the Istanbul Convention is a symbolic policy making or a really protective shield for everyone to stop the femicides. Of course, this is our hope and the main question. And from the legal perspective, of course, we are also discussing the consequences with withdrawal from an international agreement. And as I'm watching the news in German media, it's so easy to say, what are you doing, Erdogan, in Turkey? You cannot do this. It's not. It's against women's rights or something. So we want to make this question for whole Europe, for European Union especially. So because we are aware of what's happening in Hungary, we are aware of what's happening in Poland. So this withdrawal can be a door for other countries. It's super threatening. So we should be, it's not the woman in Turkey's problem. It's a problem of, it's a global problem actually, because the Istanbul Convention is open to signature to European Union as well. They also signed the convention, but we know that they haven't ratified it. And we know the reasons, what kind of lobbies are behind this hesitation not to ratify the Istanbul Convention. And just after the decision of Erdogan, we of course published a statement as DaMigra and also as Alliance of Istanbul Convention, and also we are also part of CEDAW Alliance. So CEDAW Alliance also published a statement. All these statements are available on DaMigra's website. And we also published another statement on 1st of July, and we ask all these questions like, what's going to happen next? So what can we understand from this withdrawal and the acceptance of European Commission? Because when I was just hanging around on the European Commission's website, I was just checking something, and there is a table showing which country signed a convention when, and then ratified when. And then when I saw that withdrawal of Turkey, 1st of July, I was like, oh, it's already accepted, because we know already from the women from Turkey, there are also legal battles. It's also going on. So nothing is finished yet. We know there are open cases, legal cases, like at Venice Commission. Okay, there will be maybe not direct sanction from these applications, but this is still political. So we know this decision is political. We know that the consequences would be also political. And in September, in Germany, we have general elections. So for DaMigra, it's also important to to talk about the so-called refugee pact between European Union and Turkey. A few weeks ago, we heard from the minister in Germany that they are really happy, they are really glad with the convention, with the pact, how Turkey keeps the refugees in Turkey, how Turkey helps them to keep the refugees in Turkey. But as representative of the migrant and refugee women here in Germany, we know that their family have to live in Turkey now. And they're under attack of violence, because Istanbul Convention does not, it's not only concerned with gender-based violence, but also racist violence. And we know how refugees are attacked daily based in Turkey. So we should ask the politicians today what they are going to do with this refugee pact when Turkey withdrew from the Istanbul Convention. How can we make the security, daily security of refugees in Turkey? And also, we know Germany deports LGBTIQ communities back to Turkey because they say it's a safe country. But without the Istanbul Convention, without full protection of refugees, especially gender-based, affected by the gender-based violence refugees, Turkey cannot be a safe country anymore. So these are the points that we would like to really, not like to, but we discuss with the politicians and with other our partner organizations.
Thank you very much, Elif, for your report. The next question goes to Kalina. As you are connected quite closely to the queer feminist movement in Bulgaria, could you give us an overview? Has the fight of Turkish activists against their country's withdrawal been supported by Bulgarian activists? And what is the situation in Bulgaria regarding the IC? Elif spoke of it as a protective shield. Do you have it? Last question for you, are there political shifts that are affecting the freedom and protection of Flinter and the LGBTQIA+ community in your country?
Yes, thank you once again for inviting me at this wonderful panel. The short answer to your first question is, well, basically there were unfortunately not so many big or visible actions in solidarity with the Turkish fights now on the 1st of July, but this doesn't mean that the Bulgarian feminist and queer movement is not doesn't stand in solidarity with our Turkish comrades or with our comrades all over the world. It's rather the case that especially now in June during the Pride month, all our forces and powers were directed towards defending and organizing the Pride and defending the Pride and events around the Pride month from right-wing extremists who were basically attacking every single event, threatening people, attacking people, or queer and LGBTQI people on the streets, coming to events organized by the LGBTQI community and shouting very violent and harmful things towards the participants there. So we were exhausted. We were exhausted with having to fight so much and having close to no institutional support. Only one political party stands in solidarity with the Pride and with the LGBTQI people. Most of the other parties, like some of the other parties, even had statements against the Pride. And in general, this tells you a lot about the political situation in Bulgaria and how these developments are going on. In the last couple of in the last 12 years, up until 4th of April this year, when we had our last elections, we had one conservative party ruling over the country with 1 year of, let's say, 1 year and a half of other governments, but it was mostly this conservative party. And in the last 4 years, we had this conservative party, centrist conservative party, with the right-wing extremist party in coalition ruling over the country. And this has brought a dramatic decrease in every single issue connected to feminist rights and queer LGBTQI plus rights. And one of the most prominent examples for this was exactly the fight for the Istanbul Convention that was extreme in 2018 in Bulgaria. Back then, because we were talking about spillover effects, both Özlem and Elif talked about spillover effects, and I can only sign what they said, because we saw in Bulgaria how the discourses from Poland, from Hungary, from Romania are basically coming also to Bulgaria, and we saw a massive wave of right-wing patriarchal attacks that could well, they culminated in declaring the Istanbul Convention as unconstitutional in 2018 in Bulgaria. And this gave a lot of, one of the reasons this happened is because of this right extremist party in the government that used to be in the government. Another reason are fundamental Christian organizations that were activated here in Bulgaria, and this really shifted the whole perception of the topic of gender equality into a completely bizarre direction, at the moment which right now, according to the Bulgarian constitution, there are only two genders. You know, so this is officially what, even though in the Bulgarian constitution there isn't a text saying things like this, with the decision of the Constitutional Court in 2018 against the Istanbul Convention, they basically declared that we only have that the Constitution states that we have only two genders. Which was the reason why the Istanbul Convention was declared unconstitutional, because it foresees gender as a social construct and not as a biological reality. And right now, this is going on. Furthermore, right now, this right-wing extremist party, a couple of days ago, for example, they came up with an idea of a law that defends the gender identity of children, meaning the biological gender defined as a biological construct, as only like as a dichotomy, as a biological dichotomy. Defend this and should forbid people to identify in another way different than what their biological gender was. Right now, there will be another decision of the Constitutional Court also in terms of whether trans people, for instance, are able to change their documents and change their legal, let's say, gender, the gender written in their documents. This has been legalized in Bulgaria in 1988. And since then, this has been performed. I'm not saying that it was easy, and I'm not saying that it was great, but this procedure was foreseen there for decades, and now they are attacking this. So this is the situation in which we are right now in Bulgaria, and this is what we are fighting against. And let's see how it develops. As said, we stay very much in solidarity, and we understand very well how all of these processes that are taking place in Bulgaria are very, very much connected to a global attack on feminist and LGBTQI people rights. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kalina, for this in-depth description of the situation in Bulgaria. Natassa, how have the developments in Turkey been perceived by feminists in Greece? What kind of reactions did you observe?
Well, the reaction from the feminist movement concerning the withdrawal of Turkey from the Istanbul Convention was feelings of rage, of anger, of sorrow, of solidarity towards our sisters in Turkey. It was also a reminder it was also a reminder that this does not only concern our sisters in Turkey, it concerns all of us. It is something that that makes us that caused the feminist movement in Greece to act in unity and be vigilant. It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant, because it is clearly understood that this can also, it hits home. What has happened, it hits home, because also here the policies of the current government are policies that that have an ultra-conservative orientation, and this attack on our Turkish sisters' rights is an attack on the rights of all of us, and it can at any time it can hit our own doors, and it is part of a whole backward shift towards ultra-conservatism in Europe and beyond. And seeing our sisters in Turkey struggle and seeing their protests in the streets, them taking the streets and clashing with the police and defending their lives, has been really inspiring to all of us. And it is our transnational feminist duty to support their struggles, because these struggles are common struggles. And it seems that from discussions that have taken place in our feminist groups, it seems that we are faced with a seemingly contradicting reality. On the one hand, we have a huge global feminist movement underway that is constantly growing around the world, and on the other hand, we are witnessing a fierce attack on fundamental human rights, such as the right to abortion or protection from gender violence, and in an attempt to reduce women to traditional roles of mothers and caregivers, and suppress LGBT+ people's rights. However, this contradicting reality, I would say, is not too accurate. In Greek, we have this saying that says the river cannot flow backwards, meaning that the work has been done. There is a lot of work that already has been done, and I recently read an essay by Rebecca Solnit, who has written an essay on mansplaining. And it's not the same essay, but it's another essay that talks about, where she makes a different interpretation of Pandora's box, of the myth of Pandora's box. And this myth initially talks about all the bad things that came out of that Pandora was a very curious person, very inquisitive person that opened the box and let all the demons come out, and when she closed it back, she kept hope in. But a different interpretation of this myth would be that by opening that box, we have a release of progressive ideas. And once these progressive ideas and our awakening and our empowerment are released and are underway, there is no going back to us thinking that that certain roles are our roles. You know what I mean? It's no matter how backwards current policies go, our fight will bring us forward. It's like a law of physics.
Yeah, thank you very much for these words. You used the term vigilance when it came to the recent events, and I think that is a very good bridge to the next question. the topic has already come up with Kalina and Elif talking about the spillover effect, and Özlem portraying the recent developments in Turkey so thorough. We would like to talk now about the current constraints and oppressions against Flinter Star persons by authoritarian and right-wing governments. Since this is unfortunately a transnational phenomenon, we would like to know your thoughts and perspectives on that matter, especially with regard to the regional specifics you are experiencing. So Özlem, you're first, and I think you have already covered quite a lot, but maybe you could add something in giving us an overview of the developments in Turkey, what led Turkey to pull out of the Istanbul Convention, and what social and political developments have you been observing? In which ways has the government acted towards Flinter person throughout the last years, and have there been constraints, have there been changes of public opinion?
I will mostly concentrate on the last 10 years, actually, broadly, like women's rights and have been like systematically targeted by the AKP regime, especially since 2010. Actually, Turkey ratified the convention under AK Party rule in 2012. However, like almost the same year, 1 year before, in 2011, Ministry of Women and Family Affairs was abolished and replaced instead by Ministry of Family and Social Policy. So the women is being erased from the ministry's name, but it was not actually in symbolic gesture, because the Erdogan, who was then prime minister, declared actually in the same years that he did not believe in the equality between men and women. Then came the attempt to ban abortion in 2012. So thanks to the immense struggle, like they couldn't manage to ban it. However, like, you know, although abortion is legal in Turkey, it's inaccessible. So like 53 out of like 81 provinces in the country do not have any public hospitals that provides this abortion care. In Istanbul, which is a huge city, there's only one public hospital which performs abortion, but it performs it up to 8 weeks, which is actually below the legal limit. So, and the reason they give is that they cannot do it because it isn't legal, it's illegal, although it's not, you know, like this discourse is quite like there. So when we come to 2016, there was a Parliamentary Investigation Commission report, which had a long name of this measures for strengthening the family and preventing negative effects on the family union and factors for divorce. So this report basically were proposing many legal amendments, including proposals that would pave the way basically to early and forced marriages and prevent women from divorcing. And it was proposing to make family mediation mandatory in divorce cases, which is to make it really like harder for women to get out of these family structures where they are exposed to violence. So over the years, this rhetoric and policies, not only the rhetoric, but the policies as well, like prioritizing the family has grown stronger and stronger. So like domestic violence was something to be combated, but it was combated in order to preserve the family, not to empower women and LGBT to escape the violence that they are facing within the family unit. So, and also, of course, some other huge developments, like while these were happening, the end of peace talks concerning the Kurdish conflict in the summer of 2015, and the coup attempt in July 15, 2016, and the emergency rule issued afterwards consolidated the authoritarianism in Turkey. The Kurdish women like have always been experiencing an additional layer of oppression, actually, like since, you know, like since the, as I said, like summer of 2015. Many members and supporters of Kurdish movement and HDP have been arrested. The elected mayors in Kurdish cities have been replaced by appointed trustees. Also, after the coup attempt with the emergency rule, women's organizations were shut down in the Kurdish cities. And regarding this LGBTI plus, like in 2010, it was this Ministry of Women and Family Affairs first stated that homosexuality is a disease that needs treatment. So it was being considered as this foreign phenomenon. This homosexuality is a foreign phenomenon, and it's against Turkish family and cultural values. But we do know that actually this Turkish, you can replace that Turkish there with any other country context, you know, like, or cultural context, because in Poland it's also being argued by claiming basically the same. But we also experienced this huge KYGA protests, which increased the visibility of LGBTI and the immense and powerful movement behind it. So yeah, this homophobic and transphobic discourse intensified, and LGBTI people are like in identities started to be criminalized. And yeah, when we look at all these developments, it's not surprising that Istanbul Convention has also started to be challenged in Turkey, because the convention explicitly historicizes basically the points, this close links between the violence and the gender inequality. So like with all these recent attacks on the equality and this rise of anti-gender movements globally leads to an attack on the convention, because it doesn't protect the family. So the ones who are against the convention are actually understanding it correct. It's against family structures, and that's why it's, as I said, like it's not that surprising that, you know, we reach this convention.
Okay, thank you very much for your report and the timeline and the analysis. Natassa, what is the situation like in Greece regarding the IC? Are there political shifts that are affecting the freedom and protection of Flinta and the LGBTQIA+ community?
Okay, so theoretically, Greece has ratified the convention, but in practice, reality is far from, you know, implementing the convention. There are so many instances, but I will try to focus on two, in my opinion, two very basic and important cases that outright violate the convention. One that has that the feminist movement in Greece has dealt with is a recent law that was passed that had to do with the reform of the civic code, I think is the name. Sorry. Let me find the right word. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the civil code, yes, and in family law in particular. So the Minister of Justice introduced a bill for the reform of family law. The Greek family law was first, like the biggest reforms happened in 1983, and it was considered one of the most progressive back then in reforms in Europe, because it moved the family law from the male-centric model to a more gender equality model, family model. 40 years have passed, and now the Ministry of Justice said that it needs to be reformed and become more progressive. But the way progressive is used by the current government is very different, and it serves their own interests and the interests of a very well-functioning alt-right lobby that has been working for years and lobbying for years towards a return to a family model that is heteronormative and traditional and nuclear, and one that sees the man as the master of the home. It is a copy-paste approach from the alt-right movement in the USA. Their moves are identical. They have been working and lobbying for years, and now they found open ears in the face of the current Minister of Justice. And unfortunately, they pressed for a forced joint custody after divorce. So after a couple, two people, well, in this case, a man and a woman divorce, that the person who doesn't get custody. So first they were lobbying for joint custody, no matter what the case was. So for all cases, joint custody. It didn't matter if the man was abusive. It didn't matter whether they were convicted of domestic violence. It had to be joint. And after a long battle by the feminist movement, they changed it and made it that the person who doesn't get the custody needs to have at least 1/3 of the total time of time of communication that the child needs to communicate with the other person, the other parent, for at least 1/3 of the time. Again, a blanket, let's say, a rule, a regulation that didn't take into account cases of domestic violence. The only case in which communication ceases to exist and a parent cannot take custody of their child is only when they have been convicted for domestic violence and abuse or sexual abuse, but only then, but only if the decision is final, which can take up to 5 or 6 years for the decision to be final. In the meantime, the abuser can communicate with the victims, be it the mother or the child. And this law was passed. And so this law clearly breaches Greece's obligation under the Istanbul Convention, which requires state parties to take measures to ensure that custody and visitation rights do not jeopardize the rights and safety of domestic violence survivors, as well as child witnesses and victims. And also refugee and migrant women will be particularly affected due to the reported difficulties they face in accessing justice, including inability to respond to legal costs and gaps in interpretation services. And the hypocrisy in this is that when the bill was drafted, they just added that this bill complies with the Istanbul Convention. So just a statement is enough for them. And so the bill was passed, unfortunately, and later on, we saw we had 2 cases of femicides that show us the horrible consequences this law can have on women and children. One femicide had to do with a woman that was killed by her former husband. She had reported his violence, his domestic violence and abuse to the police. She had gotten a restraining order. However, she was not protected by the police. The man went to her house and stabbed both her and her brother, who went to help her, to death. And then we also had another femicide, the more recent one, where a woman, a 20-year-old woman, was found dead in her home with her 11-month-old baby next to her. And it turned out a month later that the husband had done it. And when the husband was taken to custody, he said, I want to finish with my term in jail and go out and take care of my child. The current law, that shows that the current law, this law, cannot ensure that domestic violence survivors will be safe. And the point I want to make concerning the breaching of the Istanbul Convention is another reform that they are trying to make that has to do with the criminal code, criminal law. In 2019, after a long struggle by the feminist movement, the then government introduced lack of consent as connected to, so the definition of rape included lack of consent. And that was a huge victory for the feminist movement in Greece. What they're trying to do now is withdraw this definition and base rape only in terms of resistance to violence. So only if a person physically resists to violence, to physical violence, only then can it be considered rape. And of course, this is again a breach of the Istanbul Convention, because by insisting on a definition of rape that focusing is on resistance to violence rather than lack of consent, that will have an impact not only on the reporting of rapes, which we already know is already very low, but also on the perception in society of what constitutes sexual violence. And these two play a pivotal role in combating impunity for such crimes and in preventing them. If I am to say a few things about the protection of LGBTQIA rights, I can say that the government stance is to say the least hypocritical. There is an attempt to so on the one hand we have a clear absence of measures to protect LGBTQIA people's rights, and on the other hand we have an attempt to pink wash the government's stance. So, for example, we have a deputy minister for culture who is homosexual, and the government has made this as a token that, you see, we are progressive. We have a homosexual deputy minister for culture. Or the prime minister has established a committee that will produce a report so that it can help the government to create a national strategy for the protection of the LGBTQIA community. But at the same time, we have government officials who are doing exactly the opposite. The Minister of Justice has stated that children of same-sex couples have a tendency to delinquency, or that, or for example, or the anti-LGBTQIA law that was passed in Hungary and was condemned by a number of EU leaders in the EU. At first, it was not, the declaration of condemning that was not signed by the Greek government. Only after a wave of protests on social media did the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs come out and state that we are condemning it. And again, the government has a negative stance towards same-sex marriage, towards the legal recognition of gender identity, towards adoption rights of LGBTQIA people, towards the recognition of parental rights of trans people. So even though they are presenting an image of progressiveness, it's far from it. It shows from their actions or lack thereof.
Okay, thank you, Natassa, for the description of the recent events in Greece. And I think that it has become quite clear that the ratification of the E.A.S.T doesn't necessarily mean feminist progress, as the recent legislative procedures in Greece that you talked about and their horrible consequences have shown. Kalina, the E.A.S.T isn't, as you have stated earlier, not even ratified in Bulgaria. And you have also already given us quite an impressive overview about the situation in Bulgaria, but maybe you could add a bit on how you think the withdrawal of Turkey influences the situation in Bulgaria, even though the E.A.S.T was declared unconstitutional by Bulgaria in 2018.
Yes, thank you. It is very interesting how the debate around the Istanbul Convention developed 2018, because there were two, let's say, there were many, but let's say I will focus on two of the main arguments that were used. On the one hand, they were saying this gender identity concept, LGBTQI people and all of these things, they are imported from the West, and here we with our Eastern traditional Christian values, you know, these things are not for us, they are imported, and they are some sort of, like, you know, Western colonization of us. In the same time, for historical reasons, there are very strong, especially among nationalistic people in Bulgaria. But, like, I mean, there are some strong anti-Turkish sentiments in the country. The reason for this is historical. Bulgaria was part of the Ottoman Empire for a long time, and our whole national liberation history is connected to opposing the Ottoman Empire, and which transmitted into opposing Turkey. And this thing contribute, like the fact that the convention is called the Istanbul Convention, within the anti-Turkish sentiments in Bulgaria also contributed to the fact that that the convention was declared some sort of, like, you know, both in the same time something imported from the West, but also something coming from Turkey, you know, something shady coming there from Turkey, something like that it's not like very typical Bulgarian. And in this sense, the withdrawal of Turkey only legitimizes discourses like this, and only kind of, like, you know, legitimizes in a sense anti-feminist and anti-LGBTQI plus positions, but in a bizarre way, it also legitimizes anti-Turkish positions because it's like this now now even Turkey, you know, it's a little bit strange what is going on and how this card is played, but in a sense they are basically saying now even the, like, you know, evil Turkish people are not ratifying the convention, and this kind of, like, you know, well, fosters the right-wing debate and their discourse. What I personally see going on is that we already spoke a lot about spillover effects and things going on, and we see how the situations in Hungary and Romania and Turkey and Poland, they are influencing everything that is happening in the region, but also beyond. And we know very well from a lot of feminist research that these networks, right-wing networks that are pushing forward for these traditional family values, back to the woman as a, you know, premier caregiver and mother only. All of these debates and discourses, they are linked to, for example, evangelical organizations in the United States, to the Republican organizations in the United States, to the Vatican Church, to some powerful oligarchs in Russia. I mean, it sounds like a big conspiracy theory, but when you do the mapping and when you do the, like, you know, when you map the funding and when you trace it, then you see that it's actually that it's actually like this. And right now, even in Latin America, I was talking recently to Brazilian comrades, and they experience very similar things, where, like, these sort of evangelical libertarians are pushing for gender dichotomy there, and then attacking gender as a social construct, and weaponizing the family as a construct, as a premier, let's say, cell of society. But what I see here is that often these right-wing organizations are trying to, especially in Bulgaria, in the case of Bulgaria, we saw it very clearly. They try to present this as a cultural issue. We, the Easterners, against, you know, on the one hand the West, but on the other hand also the Oriental, like, you know, the Orient. You know, we as the Christian Easterners against both of those like superpowers trying to attack us, and they are trying to present this as a cultural issue. But what is really important for me is to see the material and economic aspects behind this, because we're talking about when we say that they are fostering or they're putting forward the traditional family, we are saying, okay, basically caregiving and care work and social reproduction are supposed to be the job of women, you know, and not something that the state or other organizations are supposed to take care of. So basically, this dismantling of the social state is very much connected to this discourse around traditional family and traditional family values, because basically the role of the social state is pushed to the traditional, to the, like, nuclear family. This has also financial and economic aspects in it. And in my opinion, we also see this, like, huge attack on LGBTQI people and identities and sexualities. Also, not only, but also because these are often sexualities or lives that are not necessarily immediately connected to reproduction. And this sometimes lack of reproduction is supposed to be punished in a capitalist system that needs women as mothers to reproduce the future workforce. So I think this, I'm not saying this is the only thing that we should be looking at, but I'm appealing towards not forgetting that whenever they say culture, we need to look deeper and then to attack this this myth about like cultural differences, because patriarchy, even patriarchy, capitalism, racism, these are global systems. They have in different places, they are manifesting themselves in different ways, but in their essence, these are global systems. And these are not cultural differences that we are experiencing, but there is more to it. So this would be my my appeal in this case when we talk about like global feminist reaction or resistance, then I think we need to attack exactly these aspects of the right-wing discourse and rhetoric.
So yeah, thank you very much for your assessment. And I think the point of the legitimization of discourses that you talked about, as well as the transnational interdependencies of the anti-feminist movement, is something we could keep in mind for the discussion. Elif, we would like to know about the situation in Germany. Especially who is included and who is excluded from the local implementation of the E.A.S.T. Natassa has already touched upon the topic, and maybe you could elaborate a bit on the situation of refugees and migrants concerning the E.A.S.T. Based on your involvement with DaMigra. So are refugees and migrants protected by the E.A.S.T, and are they actually being thought of?
When you mean E.A.S.T as a convention, of course, they are specifically mentioned in the convention. There's also a specific chapter concerning migration and asylum in the convention, but the implementation, it's of course questionable. So regarding due to timetable today, I cannot get in details, but DaMigra has published alternative report, shadow report regarding this chapter. And we elaborated on the reservations. Germany implemented the Istanbul Convention with reservations against Article 59, paragraph 2 and 3. And these are the exact paragraph that women, affected migrant and refugee women who has their residence permit dependent on their marriage, they can apply for hardship cases after their domestic violence experiences, and they should be granted renewable independent residence permit. But the German government said that their foreigners law is completely sufficient to give this right for those who are affected by domestic violence. So there's no need to implement it in Germany. But the difference between the foreigners law in Germany and the Istanbul Convention, that the German foreigners law sees it from the familiar grounds, but the Istanbul Convention says that it's humanitarian reasons. So it's not written clearly in the Istanbul Convention, but the Istanbul Convention was published with an explanatory report. And in this report, it claims clearly a migrant or refugee woman who was affected by domestic violence should be granted a renewable residence permit from humanitarian reasons. But the German government says it's complicated because the German laws sees the family reasons and humanitarian reasons completely different. In this chapter, there's also an article regarding directly the asylum rights based on grounded on gender-based violence. So today, your question like Flinta and their rights of asylum fits in this article directly. And also another article in this chapter, which is really also important for migrant and refugee women who are affected by gender-based violence, it's non-refoulement. It says that people who are affected by gender-based violence should not be deported to countries where their lives are in danger. So it covers all kinds of gender-based violence, of course. It's not limited with domestic violence. And in Germany, the implementation of these chapters are totally questionable. In September 2020, the German government published their Grevio state report. For those who don't know Grevio is a group of experts who are monitoring the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, and they ask regularly statistics and information about the implementation. And September 2020 was the time for German government. And regarding this chapter, I mean migration asylum chapter, there are really few information and statistics are not clear. For example, for the independent suppose residence permit, they say that this is under the implementation of the states. So as federal statistic, we don't have any information about it, but like 16 federal states should collect the information and should answer the statistics, full the statistics. So we don't know how many women applied for hardship case were granted an independent residence permit here in Germany. And Grevio will be visiting Germany in September, and we would like to talk to them again and remind them to make a recommendation to remove the reservations, because the deadline for the reservations is 2023. And if the German government doesn't want to renew the reservations, they will be automatically dropped off. But there's always a right for the government to renew it and keep it in implementation. But before finish, I just wanted to remind for everybody, when we are saying the Istanbul Convention and its importance, I think it's also important to mention the articles and the claims clearly. For example, when we are talking about the Istanbul Convention at DaMigra, we are always saying that we are elaborate on the convention from intersectional perspective. And with intersectional perspective, we are always, of course, underlying the racism and sexism. And our point is, of course, the main point is Article 4. It's the fundamental rights and equality and non-discrimination. And in Istanbul Convention, Article 4, it's clearly written how the convention protects women and children and filintas from violence, any kind of gender-based violence.
Okay, so thank you very much, Elif, for your report and also for the remark you made in your last statement. So I think that's definitely something we should keep in mind for the discussion and in general. I'd say let's hop on to the next question block, as now we have talked a lot about the consequences and ramification of recent events, as well as the specific situation in your countries. And so the next questions focus on the impact and the potentials of the IC. And I think that is also something that all of you have already touched upon in your speeches. But so I would just suggest that we keep it short, as we need to keep the time limit in mind. So maybe you could just answer the next questions in just a few sentences and in turn. So first Kalina, then Elif, then Natassa, then Özlem. And we would like to know in which regard do agreements like the IC remain ineffective or precarious? And which policymaking level, for example, national politics or transnational politics, e.g. the European institutions or civil society, could or should empower them? Kalina, the floor is yours.
Okay, when we talk about the Istanbul Convention, we should not forget that yes, it is a progressive document, but in the same time, it's also a document behind which we see some type of let's say neoliberal ideology. Of course, we need it, and of course, we need to ratify it. That is not like this is not the question, but we need to basically be clear that this doesn't solve our problems. has the potential to very much improve the situation of people, and especially women, flinters who are, let's say, who are struggling against domestic violence. There are many. Also for migrant women, it has as was already very well explained by Elif and also by Özlem before, and by Natassa. So the convention has a lot of potential for these like vulnerable groups, and this is why we need it. But we shouldn't stop there. This is what I'm pleading for. We should definitely not stop there. We should continue fighting further. And I'm on a more radical spectrum. I'm not sure to what extent. Of course, we need to fight for progressive documents and for progressive conventions and for progressive legislations. But I also think that when one of the things that I'm doing in my work and in the organizations that I'm part of is like this grassroots empowerment from below, and this is not something that you can do with or it's not. Yeah, this is something that you do on a different level and with different means. So I really think that I am convinced that bottom-up grassroots empowerment is the way forward. But this doesn't mean that we don't need, quite the contrary, we also need this progressive top-down, let's say, legislations. So I don't know to what extent my answer is like very much on point, but that's what I can say in this situation.
Thank you, Kalina. Elif, you're next. What do you think as the representative of DaMigra, maybe from an institutional point of view? And I'm so sorry, please just let's keep it short as we just have 27 minutes left.
Sure. Like I said before, it's really important to mention the claims of the Istanbul Convention every time, everywhere, because full implementation of the Istanbul Convention, it doesn't enough to express what we mean, what we claim, what we are asking for. So the claim of DaMigra, it's clear. Actually, we want to full implementation of Istanbul Convention everywhere, without any reservations and for everyone. So we will be working in this way more, I guess. And it's really important for everybody. And like Kalina has mentioned, it's really important for marginalized people. And it's important to remind everyone. So because when I'm checking the implementation of Istanbul Convention, also in Turkey, for example, the current law of Istanbul Convention, it doesn't cover migrant and refugee women. And in Turkey, also migrant and refugee women were killed because that they couldn't give any statement by police in their first language. When I say the first language, it's Kurdish. And Kurdish is the second most spoken language in Turkey. And a woman, when she couldn't give her statement in Kurdish, she couldn't get the protection and she was killed. So it's important to say, it's important to claim the implementation everywhere.
Thank you, Elif. Natassa, what are your thoughts on the matter?
Well, for most, I have been covered by both Kalina and Elif. It is very important to have conventions that work as legally binding agreements that oblige countries to comply with certain rules, and that in the process makes vulnerable groups of people feel safer, and also that it can give local feminist movements hope that they are part of a global chain, that they are connected with one another. Having said that, and having said that, a country is legally bound to comply with certain rules and have and provide legal and financial and social and psychological services of support to domestic violence survivors and give basic provisions, even if this can have consequences in terms of a fine towards the country that does not apply the convention. I would very much agree with Kalina that it is very important for a grassroots movement and for people within the country to fight against the domestic policies, because at the end of the day, it's what happens in the country, within the country that is involved, that can change the policies. Because we see violations of human rights all over the world. I mean, there are rules, there are conventions, there are so many conventions that we can name, but the violations are still there. So it is very important for local movements to be strengthened and empowered to resist against those policies.
Okay, thank you. Özlem, you're next.
Thank you. I will not repeat what my friend said, but want to underline one specific point. We shouldn't see all these international conventions actually as a documents written by these experts and imposed upon the states from top to down, you know, because yeah, I want to refer to an article that we published, a friend of mine from Çatlak wrote on the history of Istanbul Convention. So there she was saying, for a long time actually in Europe, violence against women was regarded as a matter of private sphere, not surprising, a protection of family. So most of the time it was considered as this non-Western problem. So through humanitarian aid, they combated with the violence against women happening in other parts of the world. This is why actually, although there are other regional documents on violence against women in America and African countries, the Istanbul Convention was drafted rather late. So it was thanks to the struggle of global feminist movement, this changed, and the mechanisms of international law also has been changed. So this Istanbul Convention, and also it's the same for other international agreements, was also written thanks to the participation of all these grassroots movements that we are now referring here. So the feedback of the women and LGBT organizations struggling in the field. So they're feminist lawyers doing strategic legal actions at the level of European Court of Human Rights, or all the shadow reports that they're written. So all this knowledge and experience are being transferred towards this international mechanisms and this, the conventions, like this international conventions, like this Istanbul Convention is being written. So yeah, as we are the writers of these conventions, so we do make use of it in the most possible way. I do agree, by paying the most attention to the implementation of it. Thank you.
So thank you very much, all of you, for your opinions and takes. Actually, we are going to pose the last question now due to the time limit. And of course, we are interested in talking a bit more about the feminist protests against the withdrawal and the anti-feminist cutbacks and developments. And of course, discuss possible connections between local and translocal struggles of your involvement in different emerging national and transnational networks and alliances and ours. So maybe you could share your experiences, especially in regard to creating connections between the different struggles, and give us your opinion on how do you think we could connect our struggles between our different countries and contexts, and how could we connect against authoritarian right-wing attacks on flinter persons and the LGBTQIA+ community? And which possibilities do you see in the movement of the 8th of March and the idea of a feminist strike in order to connect feminist struggles? So these are, I would say, rather question suggestions that you don't need to answer to like very thoroughly. Rather give us your spur of a moment ideas and opinions on it. And I would like to ask you, please keep it short. Maybe we are taking it in rounds again. Natassa, would you like to start maybe? Then Özlem, then Elif, then Kalina.
I'm a bit overwhelmed by the length of the questions. Okay, where shall I start? I think it's really important that we are connected transnationally. This is a given. I mean, there is no doubt that this can only be helpful towards our common goals and the feminist cause we are serving. I think that one of the good things that came out of the pandemic and the quarantine and all the Zooming was the fact that we were able to, people from all over the world, from different countries, representing different feminisms and different feminist movements from our own countries and our own localities, we were able to come together and get to know each other and realize that we are many, that there's a lot of us out there, and that was I felt that was very empowering. The fact that there are people, there are women, LGBT, there are Flinta all over the world that are connected to me and my cause and my feminist cause. And I found that really empowering. Of course, there are challenges that have to do with each collectives and groups' capacity to come to terms with the workload that comes together with coordinating and organizing and meeting up with other groups from other places in the world. And but I think that the potential outweighs the challenges. Of course, we need to find better ways to keep connected and to be coordinated. But the potential of a global feminist movement that is already underway is much bigger, I think. I don't know if I've answered the questions. That's my take.
You sure did, I would say. Elif, I think you're next.
Yeah, and I think this evening is a really good example of doing this. It's like coming together, sharing experiences and learning from each other. And at DaMigra, we are trying to do it also in form of different events. Like in November 2020, we organized a conference on femicides, and we published a catalog of claims together with our cooperation partners from Poland, from Portugal, from Italy. So it's also available on our website. And we focused on the Istanbul Convention, implementation of the Istanbul Convention to stop femicides. And like I said before, this year, again in September, we are going to organize a second step of this collaboration. And I think United for Istanbul Convention, it's a great, it's a fascinating work to coming together, because like we heard from tonight from each other, almost every country has a similar effect on implementation of the Istanbul Convention, with similar arguments, with similar hesitations, I would say. So it's important to come together and unify our fight.
Thank you very much. Özlem, you're next.
Thank you very much, Elif. Also, yeah, I'm recently based in Berlin and working in a human rights organization called Hafıza Merkezi Berlin. It's a very recently established one, and we were founded within this global context of this rising authoritarian governments, increasing nationalism, racism, anti-gender politics discourse, right-wing extremist movements, and everything. So we are here also, like, as a, you know, as a representative of a human rights organization as well. We are trying to fight with this global trend in alliance with other international actors. By carrying our experience from Turkey as the founders. For instance, in December 2020, we organized a closed workshop where feminist and LGBT organizations from Poland and Turkey came together and discussed these recent threats that they are facing in the gender-based rights. So we recently published this report, came out of that workshop, called Istanbul Convention, Gender Policies and Beyond, Comparison Between Poland and Turkey. And I'm also an active in feminist movement in Turkey since more than 15 years. And since moving here in the last couple of years, I could continue to be active in this feminist online journal Çatlak Zemin. And so after this, you know, with all these different roles and identities and struggles that I am in, after this presidential decree announced on March 20th, I immediately called my feminist colleagues in Istanbul, and told them, okay, I genuinely believe in the transnationality of the issue, and we need to do something more at this level as well. So, you know, let's think together. And some women, I was not, of course, the only one, and some women living in and outside of Turkey were convinced that this struggle to defend Istanbul Convention should be extended outside of Turkey. So, because we do know that, as we talked the whole night here, it's being contested in many other countries, and it's the major target and the attacks against the convention is the term gender itself. So gender is being put as a threat against traditional values, against family, national moral values, also the national moral values of all these different countries. So this which leads to, of course, this anti-LGBTIQ identities and rights. So we were convinced that this is not solely an issue of Turkey, not solely about the convention itself, actually, and it's more of a general backlash in this gender equality and disturbance about the increasing and more acknowledged equality demand of women and LGBT. So this United for Istanbul Convention will continue its struggle, its meetings. Also, like this right now, we defined the campaign, we initiated, we launched it on the 11th of May, on the 9th anniversary of Istanbul Convention. And we did, and we are continuing to keep it open. This is our online demonstration. And we're aiming to continue our work until the end of the year. So would be happy to see you all there and more people who would like to join the campaign group. And yeah, thank you again for organizing this event here today. It was a great pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, Kalina.
Yes, thank you very much. I can only subscribe to what the previous speakers have said. As exactly as Özlem, I'm also part of a transnational organization called Essential Autonomous Struggles Transnational, as you introduced me in the beginning. And for the 1st of July, I'm starting with a concrete example of how we can struggle together and connect the issues. For the 1st of July, we heard that our comrades in Turkey are struggling against the withdrawal of the Istanbul Convention. And we decided to act in solidarity. And there is, or like connected to E.A.S.T, there were events organized in many different European countries, in France, in Italy. In Italy, they had a whole week of solidarity events. In Slovenia, there was a protest. In the Czech Republic, there was a protest in front of the Turkish embassy. In France, there was in Paris, there was a sit-in protest. Even in Latin America, there were like posters hanged in support, in solidarity with what is going on right now in Turkey, but also elsewhere. And I find this network, this E.A.S.T, emerged exactly like the United for the Istanbul Convention emerged amidst a pandemic, emerged amidst a situation of social distancing. And what we were doing is to basically try to talk to each other. And I think meetings like this that we have right now and events like this where we gather together and talk to each other, sometimes they look a little bit, okay, we gather together and we talk. This is like, you know, the next Zoom call, oh, yet another Zoom call and all of these things. But in the end, this is exactly how I got to know Özlem and Elif and Natassa and all of the other people from the feminist strike in Leipzig or Munich. And I think these connections are invaluable, and they help us map and first map what is going on, and then connect the already existing struggles into something bigger than each of these individual struggles, local struggles, would be if left on their own. And I think this would be the political work, the feminist political work behind projects like this and talks like this, to map, connect, but also kind of like, you know, go beyond, one step beyond the local and then towards a more transnational. And I don't have a recipe of how exactly, because it's a process. And this is something that we all should like, you know, create together. And this would be also my final message, that we need to keep in touch and we need to stay connected and learn from each other and get smarter together. Because I really see the effects, and I really like E.A.S.T was one of the things, and meetings like this were one of the things that helped me feel less alone during the pandemic. And I hope this was also the case for other people who were joining this or other meetings.
Thank you very much, Kalina. I think those are the perfect closing words. And thank you very much for your perspectives and opinions, and especially all the interesting insights in your struggle. I think that is definitely giving hope. And I would say we hop on to a quick Q&A. So we are inviting the audience to participate. So we'd be happy to hear your questions, impressions, and your thoughts on all that has been said in the last almost 2 hours. The floor is open. If you want to say anything, please write an X into the chat window, and I will call you up by your name. And before we actually start with the questions, I would like to remind you that this event is being recorded. So if you disagree, please switch off your camera. The floor is open. Okay, so while we are waiting for questions, you could also take a look into the chat window. You can find several hyperlinks to all the reports and projects and online demonstrations. So I think that is definitely worth clicking on, and all the participants and panelists are invited to keep on posting their hyperlinks into the chat window, as I think this is a good start towards connection of struggles. Okay, so I keep on talking until a question comes. So we're almost at the end of the event, but I think a nice idea to close the event would be to invite the panelists to tell us how we can actually support them in their struggles, in their work as activists. So I think we have a great closing bit at the end. And I don't know, I would say we are waiting a few more seconds for any questions, and if there are no questions coming up, we will start with the closing round.
Everyone is tired, very understandably, so we all talked quite long, so.
Yeah, and it's Saturday evening after all, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I see that Leo has raised her hand.
Yeah, yeah, and then I didn't know if it's kind of the same that you what you kind of ask now, Sophia, because like I wanted to know, like, because with our series of events, the Know Your Local Activist thing, like I always feel like it's very great, and it's very like it feels very exciting and nice to like talk about the similarities in our struggles and in our issues, and to like really understand and kind of feel that it is all connected. But afterwards I'm always like, okay, what's next? Like, yeah, maybe also because now the pandemic situation here in Germany is getting better, and I kind of feel that the motivation to participate in online events is getting lower. So I kind of ask myself how we can like get like advantage of this year of digital events and like get it to a next step. And yeah, I think maybe it's like open question for all of us, and I know nobody has a solution for this, but maybe if one of you has like an idea or a vision of how we can like get further steps of transnational protest and activism, yeah, let me know.
Yeah, Kalina.
As said, I don't think that anyone has the solution, but I really miss meeting people live, you know. Yeah, I mean, right now I'm in Bulgaria and there are almost no restrictions here left, and I'm meeting friends and it's great. And the weather is amazing and it's like really nice, and but also politically more empowering to not more, but like, you know, it's different political feeling, and to gather together and to do something live. And I know that it's not always easy, especially in transnational context. But I think there were some processes, especially with the feminist strike. There were some global processes going on, and then kind of like, you know, the pandemic shifted them to the online world, which was on the one hand very good because people were able to connect more actively. On the other hand, some of this, like, you know, power that comes with communication face to face and actions face to face got lost. And I think we need to. I think we what I think is that we need to remind ourselves that what we experienced during the pandemic, I mean, right now, what I see is that they are trying to act as if everything is normal again, as if everything is like, you know, we overcame the pandemic and okay, clapping hands, right? But it's not. I mean, like, basically the whole, like, you know, capitalist society, patriarchal society was diagnosed with cancer 4th stage, you know, and then right now we are doing as if that's nothing. I mean, like, you know, on a political level. And I think we need to focus on acting together and revealing once again, and even more intensively so, why this pandemic happened and developed the way it developed. What will happen if we to demand things, to demand further, like, you know, further things, and to not be satisfied with this normality that we are going to be offered once again. And this is where I see the power of the movements in the next years. How exactly this is going to happen, I don't know, but this is like the political, let's say, direction in which I'm looking.
Yeah, thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I was thinking about what I mean. I really agree with Kalina about the difference between, like, how different it is to see people from up close. I mean, even in my own collective, when we finally arranged to meet in person for our next assembly, it was like we were up to here with online meetings. I mean, we had to. It was a necessity for us to meet and not have all the technical difficulties that come with, you know, with online meetings. And it was so refreshing and so relieving to see each other's faces. I think that as we step into the next phase, hopefully we will be able to meet in person. We could make use of a hybrid model, now that we've seen that we could also use an online tools that can also help people with that do not have access to, like, financially they don't have access to maybe, you know, a festival, a feminist festival in some other country, and participate there and exchange ideas. And if they cannot do that in person, maybe it can be arranged for them to participate from afar. So maybe we can organize festivals and gatherings and get-togethers where we will exchange ideas and tools and methods both ways, both in person and with the participation of comrades from all over the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with Natasha, because Zoom fatigue is there, but we also learned, thanks to the pandemic, that, you know, like, we have these means and we can use them to get together from all different parts of the world. And thanks for the attempt to do it. Tonight was an attempt to do it as well. So we none of us have a clear idea how these different attempts can also come together. They don't have to be always also united in one, but can continue their own paths by supporting each other. You know, like, I also don't believe in the fact that, you know, we all have to come together and build the biggest possible, I don't know, like feminists union or whatever organization or the demo or whatever. But we will surely continue to look for the ways to find the ways to support each other. And I do really believe that today is one of those attempts, and thanks for that.
I would also like to very shortly thank you because I believe I already said in which way we can continue to work further together. And I'm super happy to be part of tonight, to be part of this discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all so much for being here. I think these have been 2 very inspirational and empowering and enriching 2 hours. I think you have said it pretty well. We need to stay connected. We need to keep in touch. And in order to keep in touch and to stay informed about your projects, please tell us in 1 brief sentence as the concluding round, how can we support you? How can we follow you? All this information is going to be gathered and you can find it on the 8th of March Alliance's social media. So again, thank you so much for being here. And I'd say let's make a quick round. First Elif, then Kalina, then Natassa, and then Özlem. And then the event will be concluded.
Okay, I will follow what Özlem has already did. I'm going to post everything in chat. And so it will be enough, I guess, for everybody to follow further works, what we are doing.
Thanks. Kalina.
Yes, same goes to, in my case, we have with FemBunt, Fem and E.A.S.T, we have Facebook pages. So on Instagram, we're not so active, but Facebook is very active. And with E.A.S.T, we also have an email address. And if you want to stay in touch, you can email us at essentialstruggles@gmail.com. And yes, we will be very glad to stay in touch.
Thank you. Natassa.
Well, I see that Leo has already posted our contacts, our pages on Instagram and Facebook. I can also add here on the chat box our email address and our YouTube channel. Just, as a way for people to contact us and stay in touch.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Everything is on the chat box. Yeah, let's continue to be in touch and contact.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. It's been great talking to you. Thank you again for all your perspectives and thoughts. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend, a great Saturday night, and we will keep in touch. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.